of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, and thank you for coming. There's been an agenda provided. Is there any additions or corrections to agendas presented?
Mr. Chairman, I have a few additions I'd like to add, please. First one is 10:30 a.m. Please add Kyle Creer for a feedlot grant agreement and feedlot work plan. You do have copies of both in your packets. So 10:30 with Kyle for feedlot agreement and feedlot work plan. At 10:40, I'd like to add Auditor Treasurer Tyler Reich to set home abatement public hearing, new home abatement public hearing. And then under other business, a request for the Dakota 38 riders for limited use of the fairgrounds on December 18th to tie up their horses and water their horses for their ride. Commissioner Johnson brought that to my attention yesterday. And to use the facility for no charge for an overnight. The last thing I have, Mr. Chair.
Hearing those additions, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of November 26th, auditor warrants of 12-2, and hospital warrants, amount of $128,159.10.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First up, we have Highway Engineer Nick Bergman. Morning, Nick.
Morning. All right, first up for me today is project updates. First update I have is for Henning Construction. It's for the two culverts, the group of two that they got. The one was by Indian Lakes and the other was on our County State Aid Highway 3. That work is complete, well, substantially complete. There might be some touch up in the spring, but it's open to traffic and everything. So, next update is on our County Road 2. Henning Construction also had that one. That's just off our County State Aid Highway 16. That work is also complete. Same thing there. There might be a little touch up in the spring, but for the most part, that work's done as well. Then the last update is that last group we let. There's two on our County Road 16 and two for Sweet Township. The one for Sweet Township was washed out in the flooding, so there's really no road left there. Just giant hole in the road. And the culverts did get made and they have been delivered. They're sitting on site. There's a good window of weather. The contractor might try to put those in. So good news. I didn't think that was likely to happen, but it's actually looking like there's a pretty good shot of it now. So that's all I have for project updates. Next item I have is a request for board action to approve the sale of some surplus equipment. We'd like to get rid of a 1998 Chevrolet pickup. It is in our inventory. It is unit number 1. The one I sent out, I had a typo. I said it was a 96 model,
Right.
but it's actually a
98?
Yep. Apparently I couldn't read my writing there. But we'd like to sell it on Livermont auction sometime, whenever it works for them. So, it has a miss right now. It's an old pickup in kind of rough shape, so we don't really stick anything into it. So we just like to sell it as is. It runs, but
How many miles?
150, 60,000, but it's our shop truck, so it's a lot of short trips. So yeah, I guess I'd just like approval to sell that.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we authorize Nick to go ahead and sell surplus vehicle.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion second to sell the Chevrolet pickup on Livermont auction. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item. Do you have a picture of that map? Oh, yep. If you remember me talking with you a while ago about our County Road 86, with all that flooding, we ended up with kind of over half of it. So then thinking about plowing and whatnot, Doug and I have been talking, and it's gonna be a real pain for us to plow that road, because we can't drive through there, through the lake. We have to drive around it, and those are some pretty not good roads around there. So I guess we think that we might be better off having Rock Township's contractor plow that 1.25 miles, because they're driving right through there on 190th Avenue anyway. So I don't know if I need permission to do that or what. We might look into trying to swap with them if it works out, you know, like, hey, you guys do a little bit and we'll do a little bit for you. But otherwise, it might be best off if we just hired their contractor to do that 1.25 miles there. You know, it costs us to plow too, and then plus the going around, we might actually have to plow to actually get there, because we're out more than them, so. I don't know, does anybody have any thoughts on that? Like,
I think we could just let the county engineer handle that at his discretion and.
I agree.
Make the best deal you can and do what's best for us and them, if you can work out a deal that's agreeable to everybody.
Yep, we'll look into that first, but
I don't think we need to go into a bunch of legal stuff, do we? Or-
No, I don't think
no,
so.
I just didn't want you to see bills on it.
Okay, that's
What
fine.
are they doing here, so.
Your intent is just a temporary thing here until we get it
Oh,
straightened
yeah,
out.
yeah, till we get that road back open, and then but I don't know when that's gonna be either, so I don't know if the solution is there yet, so.
Well, thanks for the information, but yeah.
Yep. My next maintenance item is on County State Aid Highway 25. That's the stretch by John Deere. We just bought some right-of-way out there because we're gonna do a widening and surfacing project on that road. The property right across from John Deere has a bunch of trees there, and that L&O power line is going through there. You know, they've worked with us pretty well as far as, you know, I told them we had a road project coming up, so they've been working with us, very cooperative with us on line placement, you know, make sure we get something that works for everybody. And their engineer called a week or two ago, and they asked if we would be willing to participate in some of the tree removal. We would have to take them all out anyway, after that 60 feet. We could tell them we're not interested now, and then they would probably have to do it, but they've worked with us, we would have to do it anyway, so I guess I'd like to just split it 50-50. You know, like I said, we would have had to do it all anyway, but we could probably tell them that.
Cheaper than if they weren't cooperative and you had to move their line or.
Yes, yes, definitely. I thought 50-50 was fair, and they seemed like they were interested in that, but I wanted to run it by you guys first.
Sounds good.
So you're gonna use your manpower for it, or you're gonna have to hire?
No, they would hire a contractor to do whatever tree removal they had to do, and I told them they'd need to split out that segment of the bill, and we would pay for half of that. You know, we'd be paying a contractor to do that anyway during the road projects. So. Okay. Then as far as the rest of my maintenance updates, we've been doing a few little things, but the bulk of the work over the last month has been plowing snow, unfortunately. But then we've been stripping dirt at the pit, at our gravel pit. As you recall, we rejected bids. We just thought the price was too high on our project, and it seemed largely in part to stripping costs, so we're working on that ourselves to try to get that cost down. One unintended consequence of doing that is it might jack up the price in the spring for crushing, because it'd be a shorter, because we're about out of gravel, so it'd be a shorter window. So I'm looking into now possibly hiring someone, which would probably end up being local, to come in and screen some gravel. It wouldn't be as good as the crushed material, but that might be the cheapest way to get us by till we can let a bigger crushing project. So I'm gonna do some numbers on that, but I may be back to want to do, you know, two projects, a smaller one. So.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask Nick, and just thinking out loud, have you looked into the economics of us owning our own crusher? Or don't we have the labor to run it?
We probably couldn't do a crusher, but I think we could probably do a screener. I think the unit we looked at was about $100,000. Then you'd have to get a stacker and a generator. But I talked to our Safe Assure guy, and that you'd have to get into the world of mining then, and there'd be a bunch of
For
requirements.
safety compliance, it would be
Yes.
a little more complex.
Yeah,
Okay.
he kind of thought, if things are going well now, you're probably just better off leaving it alone. So we have looked. I thought it'd be, you know, Doug and I thought it'd be probably a good thing, or be nice to be able to do that ourselves, you know, even if we were kind of short staffed, maybe you could send 2-3 people out there per day if you can't do a full job somewhere else. But it sounds like it's a lot more complicated than just buying a piece of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, I guess that's all I have for updates. Anybody have any questions for me?
On County Road 8, where that culvert was done, seems pretty rough. Is that gonna get,
Could be. I haven't been over it for a couple weeks. That'll be patched, you know, in the future. We've been
Right.
leaving those. I think it's just better to put up with it for a year and then let it settle out.
right,
And you get an
I mean,
overlay on
is
it.
it possible to maybe add a little gravel?
Oh, yeah, we can touch it up. Yeah, definitely.
Mr. Chair, Nick, out east of Edgerton, there's a couple miles past the John Deere store out there. There's an area, well, the road's narrow there anyway.
Oh, County Road 1?
But, and I don't know, maybe there's a long-term plan, to do something with that, but there's some real big tree trunk stumps out there about 2 miles on the south side, and they're right in the middle of the ditch. If somebody slid off in the ice or something, hit one of those, they're gonna be in a, because they're big, they cut the trees off, but they left a big tree stumps in the ditch. Whoever, years ago, it's nothing that just happened now, but
Oh, it has been a lot, like how many?
they've been there for years.
Like 2 or 3 years, or are you
Oh,
talking like
20,
10?
30 years probably,
Okay.
or more. But they're right in the middle of the ditch, and I don't know if they could be dug out, or if somebody slides off the road there or something, they're gonna hit that thing, those things. I'd say there's about 3 of them there, I don't know, something like that. But if you get out that way, just take a look at them sometime.
Yeah. I guess just a little info on that road. 5-6 years ago or so, we kind of started touching base with some of those people because we felt that'd be a good road widening project.
Give up any land there, but
Back at that time, the one that owned probably a third of the frontage along that stretch wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So we kind of let it go. But we did buy some easements along some building sites.
there's a lot of trees close to the fence line. up
Yeah.
there, too. If you were gonna widen it out, it'd be a big project. But these big tree stumps are right in
And what side of the road is that
on
on?
the south side.
South side. Okay.
Excuse me, what road number is that again, Butch?
One, I think.
County Road 1, east of 18.
It's just on this side of the county line, half a mile or a mile, something like that.
Right on the east side of the building site,
One east of
Yeah,
18.
could be,
okay.
just a little bit,
south side of the road?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know which ones you're talking about.
Just take a look at them sometime, or Doug's out there, have him take a look at it and see.
Thanks. Yeah, will do.
Guess I only had one comment, and that was for the Indian Lakes Road, replacing the culvert there. I thought Henning did a fantastic job. That was done, I think, within a week. I mean, they did it pretty quick, and
Yep, they're fast.
they were working pretty late some nights too, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and that was pretty impressive, so.
They brought in some portable generators with the huge lights on them,
Yeah.
so they could work even later. I mean, they were great.
Yeah, that road wasn't shut down too long.
Nope.
That was impressive. So,
Nope, I've been really happy with them.
okay. Anybody else have anything for Nick?
Nope.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, our next item for regular business is the public hearing appointment at 10 o'clock. So we can move ahead to other business, if that's all right with everyone. Let's just go down the list. Personnel's first. Kathy, do you have anything today? Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Good morning.
Morning.
So the only thing I have for personnel today is the cafeteria plan resolution, which is also listed under other business. And that's resolution 59-4219, Pipestone County Benefits Contributions and Cafeteria Plan Arrangement. This looks the same as last year's. It just defines how our contributions are given to employees for their insurance plans. We have a cafeteria plan, which is just, people that enroll in the single health insurance get a certain dollar amount, and the people that enroll in the family get a certain dollar amount. You can see those listed here under funding. Under A, it's $9,300 per year, or $775 per year or per month for those who elect single health insurance, $13,344 or $1,112 a month for those that elect family health insurance. If there's anything left over from the county contribution, employees can use that to purchase optional benefits or fund their own HSA contributions. So I pretty much left everything the same as last year, except for just updating the dollar amounts and the dates, and also adding our new group short-term disability coverage.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion second to approve the Pipestone County Cafeteria Plan. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Third quarter budget report approval. That's Steve.
Mr. Chairman, you should have that in your packet, about 60 pages long, 32 back-to-back. For third quarter, generally, going through them, all the different departments. Travel budget is at 109%. That was primarily due to purchase of the car this year, which came in a little more, but we did use a little money from both capital expenditure, and also there was a little money out of the non-allocated in there too. And one of the big budgets, IT is running about 95%. A couple of big costs, and I know Bill had brought in a couple non-expected costs during the year, and one of those was our spam, basically called spam server. We had to change because what was happening, it was like an $8,000 cost, but we're still paying for 2 of them this year, but the one we were using before goes off in January. So we had to pay that. That was one that we ran in trouble between law enforcement and courts, and also stuff coming in from the state. What was happening is it was being caught in the spam server, and law enforcement wasn't getting the data they needed for charges to be sent to court, and vice versa, and they weren't talking together. So that's why Bill changed it to a new server. So that's where some of these costs went up. So that's primarily where we're at. But for the last of the year, really it doesn't have a whole lot else going on. We did have what I would say a significant failure last week of 2 controllers that operate our servers for backup, and that happened on Tuesday, I believe. And Sean came down, and they were able to bring in a spare controller from Renville County to get us by until we can get the new ones. But it's just, we had a double failure, and that's, Sean said that's totally unheard of. That usually never happens, but for some reason it happened, so we lost all our email, our G drives, all of our, and unfortunately law enforcement lost about 6 hours of some data too that they're having to rebuild manually. It's just one of those things. So in the world of this equipment we use, there's always going to be a chance of a failure, but it happened. So that's primarily where we're at, but there might be some bills coming in for the end of the year for the repair of the controllers and things we'll have to, so it could push his budget maybe a little over 100% here. So, but he's doing the best he can at it too, and it's the IT world and the realm we're in just doesn't end, and we're continually creating more data too, and that all has to be stored. And the biggest thing Bill's telling me is that it's storage space is what we have to have, and we have to keep buying larger devices to hold the data we have. It's like, you don't get rid of it.
How long do we have to keep most of it?
Depends on what you're talking about. If it's emails, it's probably like 3 years, and then it, can be wiped, but a lot of counties will put it into a separate archive and just leave it there too. But the longer you have it, data on that type of thing, that the more there's discovery of it. So a lot of counties do have retention schedules. After 3 years, they can be wiped away.
I think for law enforcement, it goes up to possibly even 10 years, I think.
On some things.
On certain data.
And then the other part of what we'll go into next year is that we'll be storing all the data from the dash cam system that we just authorized. So that's going to be all in HD video that we're going to be storing here too. And Bill and Mike, Keith explained that, so that's going to be more data too. So we're in the data storage business now. That's what we do, and you keep it and you use it. It's got to be saved for a period of time, and then it can eventually be erased. But those costs are there. They just keep going on.
Especially like HD video, like you're saying, that could be gigabytes a day that we'd have to retain. That's going to be a lot of space we'll need.
And we're into the terabytes of storage now. We're in lots of gigs.
That was going to go quick though too.
Yeah, it does. But everything got restored again, like I said, except for about 6 hours of data. And he had to rebuild the entire G drive, which was 2.7 terabytes, and it took almost 24 hours to rebuild it. So he and Bridget worked really hard last week to get us back going after. And of course, it was right that as the storm was coming through too, so it was like, and then there was a power surge at some time during the night. Don't know if that was related or not to it, but other than that, the budgets are primarily, in the 70s. Some were a little lower. Building plants at 85. As they're at the end of the year, most of the big expenditures have been made. Our probation's at 90%, which I would expect, as far as all we've got left is another month of salaries on that. So conservation, the 601, that's at 284%, but in looking back in that, the expenses are up, but the money hasn't come back in yet on the revenue side. And even if you're looking at, with Nick, he's taken off, but on his construction account, the 340, we're at 871% of expenses, but the state money and the federal money isn't coming back to offset it yet. So it looks bad now, but it's not an issue because it all eventually evens out. But other than that, really, things are looking quite well. Ditch fund's up 116%. We spent a little more than normal on some repair work we did, but again, that's an item that gets assessed back to the landowners too, so it's a non-levy item anyway. So, but by and large, overall, the budget's looking really good. We move through the fourth quarter here. We'll do another one at the end of the year.
All right, well, thanks, Steve. We do need to take action on that, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the third quarter budget report.
Great.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, motion second, approve the third quarter budget report. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. I suppose we can move ahead to that authorizing fairgrounds for the Dakota Riders. Luke, were you going to present on that, or was Steve? or-
And they just wanted to board their horses at the fairgrounds on the 18th. I think we let them do it last year also. And
I think sometimes Little Feather helps serve them meals or something
Right.
too, so
Mhm.
there's no cost there. So.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we authorize the use of the fairgrounds.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion second to approve the Dakota Riders to stay at the fairgrounds. Do you know what date, Steve?
That would be December 18th.
December 18th,
Yep.
at no charge.
At no charge. And Mr. Chair, also I talked to Wayne, building and plant, about it, and it's very minimal work to him. They will use the show arena because that does have water turned on it, so they can get water for it, and they'll use the tie down, or tie outs for holding the horses, so it's minimal, work for Wayne to deal with. Might have some manure and stuff to pick up afterwards, but he'll just use the Bobcat and take care of that, so.
Okay.
Pretty minimal.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes our other business now at this point, except for committee reports. Want to move on to that now, or do we want to take a short recess?
Recess.
Recess?
Take 15-minute recess, reconvene at 9:45, and we'll move on to committee reports before 10 o'clock.
Sounds good.
Time's 9:46. We'll reconvene the meeting. We'll go ahead and continue with, or start up with our committee reports. Luke, if you want to go ahead and kick them off.
Okay, on November 12th, I attended Holland City Council. On the 13th, the Highway 23 Coalition Legislative and Projects Committee met and was able to get a long-term solution study for the Pipestone to Russell stretch on the project priority list as one of their top 5 priorities for next year's funding. On the 14th, the Soil and Water District, they had set their health insurance rates and mentioned the issues with PEEP and our local provider issue that we talked about at the hospital meeting. And then also mentioned that the federal building process for NRCS and FSA might reopen, sounds like in early 2020. So, possibly the county could consider looking at that to have something jointly where we could keep it co-located with the Soil and Water District and Extension. If they're going to build they want a new location to get out of their current office space or whatever. And apparently they were going to build one previously, but that must have fell through somehow, and I think they're going to reopen the process so that people can or make a proposal or something. On the 20th, the Highway 23 Coalition full board met, and they did approve the priority list, including the long-term solution study for Pipestone to Russell. Set March 18th, 2020 is Transportation Day at the Capitol. Set May 26th to 28th, 2020 for the Washington fly-in, and began working on a mission statement. On the 21st, Prime Health met. PCMC was accepted as new member, and it was their first meeting with the board. About 120 some employees will be taking advantage of that, and of course it creates a lower deductible for the Pipestone County employees, which is a plus to have our local facility involved. And then the board's going to be looking at some cost reduction options moving forward, just to they're still kind of dogged by one large case that's drug on for the last couple of years. On the 25th, the Regional Solid Waste Board met. Nettie is retiring December 13th. It's probably the biggest news. She's been there for 33 years, and it's pretty helpful, and not just for solid waste, but the Energy Board and transportation issues and a number of different regional issues.
She's retiring at the SRDC. I think she's going to be out of everything.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then they mentioned that AMC is going to be sending out a survey to auditors coming up regarding tax forfeited properties, which is one of AMC priority items to try to get some funding to deal with tax forfeited properties. And I mentioned it to Tyler. So whenever it comes, they'll sure to fill it out. And then there's going to be another cycle of recycling grants in early 2020. On the 26th, of course, the hospital board met, and then yesterday, the AMC Environment and Natural Resource Committee had a teleconference reviewing the proposed resolutions prior to the annual conference, and of course, we had the truth and taxation last night. And that's all I had to report.
Thank you. Dan?
Okay. On November 4th, I had the Rural Minnesota Energy Board meeting in Slayton with Nettie, and it also was involved with a CERT steering committee, and the steering committee is working with this Southwest Regional Sustainable Development Partnership, and also attended a meeting in Clara City on the 13th on that same Sustainable Development Partnership. On the 7th, we had a Prime West meeting up in Alexandria. More discussion. In fact, probably looked at you there, Les, too. We talked about, of course,
I wasn't at that one.
Oh, that's right, you didn't make it to that one. We had more of the 11 counties there as well, too. Worked, of course, on our county-based purchasing discussions and where we're going, and we did have finalized then the vote on bringing those in, and we've got the joint powers that we acted on last meeting, so that was the majority of that meeting. Then on Friday the 8th, Marshall, I had my Southwest 18 Mental Health Consortium. One of the issues we talked about there, and again, we talked about that recently too, and that is the loan that they had given to the house. What's the name of the house down in Worthington? Trinity House.
Unity House.
Unity House. And they've requested another $50,000 forgiveness of that loan. So still working on the details of that. Not sure just how that's going to work out. On the 13th, then I mentioned I had that meeting in Clara City. On the 14th, had Pipestone Area Coalition meeting out at the school here, working on some of their positive messaging and so forth for anti-tobacco use, and of course big concern with the vaping, as we're all very familiar with now. It's interesting, I know we talked about before, how Southwest Health and Human Services had talked to us about vaping for the last 5 years, hadn't they, Les? And now it's really coming to be quite an issue. So. On the 20th, then, back up to March, we had our Southwest Health and Human Services meeting. There's really nothing of significance that stood out other than we're doing our annual review and our budgeting up there. I think we're looking at, what was the total levy request? 7?
7 and 5.
7 and 5, yep. And then we also increased that from 50 cents to $1 per capita for the health portion of it that we talked about yesterday. On the 25th, then, over in Slayton, I had a solid waste meeting with Luke, and also in the afternoon, we had our Minnesota Rural Energy Board meeting. And that concluded my month.
Thanks, Tim. Les?
Okay, on the 4th, at Plant Ops at the hospital, that was pretty much presented at the last board meeting. On the 7th with Prime West, I wasn't able to attend that. Then on the 13th, we had Southwest Mental Health in Laverne. Hoping for a good December that we can get close to a break even for the year. What's hurt the most is Unity House, not being able to staff it and stuff, and then insurances are paying less and less all the time. That's some of the shortfalls there, reasons for them. Then on the 14th, we had soil and water, and Luke kind of highlighted everything there. Kind of exciting that bids will probably be opening up again this year. So, and then on the 20th, Health and Human Services, Dan highlighted on what had happened there. On the 25th, we had personnel meeting and also extension that day. Personnel, we met with elected officials on salaries. Not much to talk about as far as extension, just pretty much basic.
Election of officers, Brian Boomgarden's
Yeah,
term's done.
He is going off the board. He was awarded a plaque and stuff. As far as the officers, everybody just moves up. So. And then on 27th, radio board got canceled the day before because a lot of people had travel plans for Thanksgiving that afternoon, so they canceled it. So that's end of my report.
Bruce?
I didn't have a lot this month. On the 11th, we had a plan ops meeting at the medical center. Les was there. Pretty much the normal things we've been discussing, showers and drainage and outside, outdoor things. But then we attended the Slayton Hospital Board meeting one night. Les and Brad Burris were attended that also. That was interesting. Talked about a lot of stuff over there, or listened to a lot of their issues they're discussing. I think they have decided to stay with Sanford at this point, but we're not involved in that, other than just being observers and whatever. On the 14th, we had an SRDC meeting at Slayton, and that was pretty much business as usual. And Nettie announced that she'd be retiring and stuff like that. But otherwise, that's all I had this month. So,
Okay, thank you. On Monday the 4th, I had Nurse Family Partnership in Wilmer. Numbers are still really strong. They keep getting several state and federal grants to the point if a lot of them are multi-year grants, so if they continue again through next year, might take a year off from county contributions for the program. So their numbers are doing real good. Nothing else. There's a couple other counties looking to join them as far as JPA, and those are Nobles and Sibley. Sounds like Sibley's more likely of the two. The same day, we had an executive committee at PCMC regarding PEEP and provider levels, which we've done over at the meeting. Explore Southwest and Friends of Casey Jones Trail were canceled that month, so I wasn't able to go to those. Canceled for various reasons. Monday the 25th, CPT and Morris. We have two programs of the tax rewrite that are up for demo. They're showcasing those at the Assessors Conference that's going on right now. They adopted a play plan study. They had David Drown Associates run the study on there, and they recommended going 80% of what Metro pays for similar jobs, whatever. But the committee recommended 70, so they met in the middle at 75 after everything went down to vote. They hired 2 graduates out of the U of M, which is the first time in over almost 10 years they've been able to do that. Now that their joint powers or whatever are becoming a little more attractive to students and whatnot coming out of that into that field. And that was pretty much it. Yesterday, though, at Pipestone Lincoln Safe Roads Coalition up the EMS building, still just more in the planning stage and gathering informations on when are the fairs, when are certain events coming that they can try to, schedule things around to promote their message and whatnot. And then, obviously, last night we had Truth and Taxation. Those are my reports for the month. This time I'll wait for 10 o'clock. Open up the public hearing. Morning.
Here's what I did in my free time.
Got one? Nice one. Is that Pipestone County, did you find it?
Out in Standing Rock.
Nice. Is that archery or rifle?
Rifle. Steve got you the copy of my good one, not my draft. I think so. The draft was kind of about 5 o'clock yesterday. I said, "Well, let Steve know what I'd done." So I threw it out there, and then I sat and revised it for the next hour to make sure I had something that had vowels and capitals and punctuation.
Sure.
Okay. At 10 o'clock, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for the appointment of Tyler for Auditor Treasurer. Steve, I don't know if you want...
Mr. Chairman, could I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have motion second to open the public hearing. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're in, public hearing is open.
Mr. Chair, just a little background for the people on video and here at the hearing as well. The intent of this public hearing of the County Board of Commissioners to consider appointing the office of the County Auditor Treasurer. County Board will conduct the public hearing Tuesday the 3rd at 10 a.m. in the Commissioners' room. Persons attending the hearing will be given an opportunity to speak either for or against the appointment proposal. So we have a resolution that was published in the paper notifying the public of the intent to make the office of the Pipestone County Auditor Treasurer appointed and providing an opportunity for public comment. And information on this continues, whereas the laws of Minnesota 2019, Chapter 10, Article 2, Section 17-22, amended Minnesota Statutes 2018, Section 375.08, and Section 375.10, and Section 375.12, and adopted Minnesota Statute 375.1205 to allow under certain circumstances each county board of the state of Minnesota to fill the office of the elected office of the County Auditor Treasurer by appointment. And notice is hereby given that the County Board of Commissioners are considering the appointment of the county elected Auditor Treasurer effective January 6, 2020. And the County Board must notify the public of its intent to make certain offices appointed by publishing a resolution once each week for 2 consecutive weeks in the official publications of the county and its cities. And whereas within 30 days following the completion of the public hearing and adoption of resolution making the office of the County Auditor Treasurer appointed, a petition requesting a referendum signed by at least 10% of the registered voters in the county may be filed with the county auditor. And whereas the public has the ability to initiate a reverse referendum to return the office back to an elected position any time after 3 years. Be it resolved that the required notice be published in the official newspapers of Pipestone County the weeks of November 18th and 25th, 2019 in the Pipestone County Star, Edgerton Enterprise, Jasper Journal, and Tyler Tribute. And be it further resolved that notice is hereby given that public comment will be heard on the intent to appoint the County Auditor Treasurer at the Pipestone County Board of Commissioners meeting on December 3rd, 2019 at 10 a.m. in the Commissioners' room located at the Courthouse Annex Building, 416 South Hiawatha Avenue, Pipestone, Minnesota. So that's the notice of the public hearing, and that's why we're here this morning. I did contact County Attorney Sandy, and I do have a opinion regarding the proposal and what we're planning to do. And so there are a few changes to what the resolution is stating. And this time I would like, Demaine, if you would go over the opinion with the board and the people here. Would that be all right to do that?
Yes, the issue that I looked at was basically a timing issue. If the board decides to make the position an appointed position, that's one thing. But timing-wise, whether or not the board, upon passing that resolution, has the authority or the ability to make an elected official like Tyler now an appointed official that will serve under the direction of the board as department head. And so I just looked at that issue, whether or not something can be done today to appoint Tyler today to the position, or whether or not he has to serve out the term as an elected official. And my conclusion was that there's a little bit of ambiguity in the statute, but it all flows back into 1205, subdivision 5, and that provision specifically says that a person who has been elected like Tyler has to continue serving in that capacity, and that capacity would be as an elected official until the end of his term. So my conclusion was that if the board does go ahead today and determine to make an appointment, by statute, it has to enter into an agreement with the current elected official saying that at the end of the term or he will be appointed, but that the appointment cannot take effect today. He can't be a department head today, and he can't be underneath the auspices of the board because he's still an elected official. That's the summary of my opinion.
Thank you. I guess at this time, let me go ahead and open up
Sure.
for public comment.
Yeah.
Or
see what the public has to say about the intention and the idea here.
Come forward. Please have a seat. Yep. And if you would cite your name, please, for the public, for the record.
I'm Roger Algersma. I've one course sort of an accounting degree, 20 years ago already, including a good auditing course from Bob Timian at Augustana. He taught that for 20 years or so. I also worked in security at college when I was young, and the similarity between an auditor and a security guard is both are checking if everything's in the right place, and they're checking if everybody's doing their job right. And both of them, the key to make it work right is to check things that they don't know are being checked. Because if you're checking these three things and everybody knows it, no crook is going to make a mistake there. They'll make a mistake somewhere else. So you have to check where they don't know you're checking to see if they're honest. So the whole basic idea of having the auditor and the treasurer the same job, when the auditor checks on the treasurer, makes the whole auditing process not credible. I mean, if you're checking on yourself and you're supposed to check something you don't know what you're checking, if you want to combine jobs, if you had the recorder and the treasurer the same and the auditor could check on everybody, that would be a lot less probability of getting problems. The whole reason to have auditors is because not everybody's as honest as they look. I mean, if you just hire the honest people, there's people that'll stay honest if nobody's checking. I mean, there's people that good. I think when Mr. Johnson says in the paper we should have a year to review this before we start moving things around, this is that year. And so I'm bringing that up even though it doesn't directly address what you're thinking about doing today. Tyler said in the paper that it's better if the state had some regulations on what qualifications the treasurer should have. Some people want more regulations, some want less. I think if there's proof that we got some bad treasurers in the state, they should have some regulations. If we don't have proof there's some bad treasurers, I think everybody knows we want somebody capable watching our tax money. To suggest that people don't know there should be qualifications is just not accurate. Most people probably don't have the qualifications themselves, but they at least want somebody they can trust that knows what they're doing. So, and as far as making it appointed, government and business are two different things. Some want government run like a business. Well, I like it organized too. But the whole reason the Founding Fathers split the power to have checks and balances is because they came from monarchies in Europe where it was all one person with the power. And those that want government to be like business, they want one person in charge and everybody just does it. That doesn't make good government. And so to have the voter in at different levels instead of you guys just appointing them makes some sense from a government point of view, from good quality government. An example of when I was taking accounting at Augustana back in the early 90s, Professor English was very concerned because the AICPA, which makes the rules for accountants over the whole country, had just decided to let accountants become consultants. When they do the accounting for the company, they give them advice, and they make more money with the consulting than with the accounting. But he says, once they're a consultant, and then they're the accountant doing the books, they can fudge the books to make it look like their consulting work real well. And this idea that people checking on themselves is going to create problems, that's concerned them a lot. 20 years later, I was in Texas to visit my daughter and son-in-law, and heard a speaker at Rice University. He's an accountant there. Rice is one of the top 5 universities in the country. This 80-year-old accountant, after the speech, he's very concerned. He says, This is 20 years after English was concerned about them checking on each other. This old guy, he taught at Rice. He'd been on boards and committees. He had a CPA. He had his own accounting firm. He was a top-level accountant in all areas. And he was very concerned. He says, up until 20 years ago, accountants were considered honest people. And now the last 20 years, they're not anymore. And he didn't say what changed, but I remembered Professor English being concerned about that very thing. If you're checking on yourself, there's less likely that, I mean, not everybody's going to stay as honest if they're checking on themselves. So the whole idea of the treasurer and the auditor being the same person makes no sense to me. It's one of those things where, you know why Norwegians came up with the word "ufta." So, yeah, if I think of something else later, I'll email somebody or whatever.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments. Was there anyone else from the public that would like to comment at this time? Thank you. If you could please cite your name for the record.
Joan Stout. I sat in this room in 2013 when Tyler was our new person who was hired. And from this ad that was ran in the paper that said what our qualifications were going to be, you know, business degree, finance, accounting, similar years experience, 5 years. He said he was going to be getting his CPA license. Has that happened yet? Can anybody on the, I know 2 of you were on the board at the time, the other ones,
As far as I know, he has not gotten a CPA license, and we thought, or at the time it was discussed, but I don't think it was a requirement for the job, but it was discussed at that time. I remember that, so.
okay.
That was something that we would have liked to see happen, but he hasn't gotten that far, so.
Okay. I kind of look, that might be an important thing to have if you're going to be in, you know, handing millions and millions of dollars, as was said in the paper. Do we think it's ever going to happen, or?
I can't tell you that. I don't know what his intentions are at this point, but I don't know if anybody else, if Tyler's here, if he has any thoughts along that line, or?
I guess moving forward with the CPA, probably not. There is another certification called the CPFO, which is Certified Public Finance Officer, which is much more directed towards governmental accounting. CPA is generally more of a degree just showing accounting as a whole. It's mainly for private sector use, private auditing, private accounting, and so on and so forth, where CPFO is really 100% related to governmental accounting, and that is one thing. After I found that certification, that it's a much larger certification with GASB and nationwide. That's something that I'm looking into.
Okay. I have been into the treasurer's office several times, and I've not been happy with what has happened there with me. I went in for a driver's license, thought I had everything. I read through everything on the website that said I was supposed to bring. Didn't realize that even though you changed your name 35 years ago, you had to bring that form in too. I thought it was just maybe since the last time I got my driver's license. So I go back home, and I'm like, you know, we have more information about plastic bags in our recycling than, and I'm like, I talked to my friends about this, and they're like, hey, you should have seen how many times I had to go back to get a passport. The communication is just not, I mean, you read it on the website, and it's like, think you got it right? They just don't want to be consumer friendly there. I don't think they care about how many trips you make back and forth to get some of this stuff done.
Well, I can't speak to all that, but
Right.
this is a new, the passport thing, and there's some changes that have been made in the last few years here, and the driver's license is one of them. I've had my wife for 2 weeks trying to get enough paper so I can get my driver's license renewed next month, in January. I know it takes a lot of stuff now, and it isn't, the rules aren't made here, they're made elsewhere, but yeah, maybe there should be more information out there for people.
I mean, I
But some
thought I read
people
it
Look at
right.
something and they think, oh, that's okay, they can just fill that out when I get there. But they do have to have all this stuff with them to get it, and yeah, it is a.
I mean, I thought,
It's a
I didn't have a
hassle.
name change since my last driver's license, so I'm thinking, I didn't need that part of it.
And it is more difficult to deal with all that, so.
So, yeah, I made my multiple trips, but I think one of the things that I had gone up there and inquired on a property that was going to be tax forfeitured, and it was a property right out in the Hatfield city limits there. And what it was, how much, if I wrote the check today, how much is it going to be? And Tyler says, well, I've given that person the opportunity to make payments over the next however many years it was, and I don't remember. And I said, really? I said, have you actually gone out and looked at that property? And his words to me were, I don't have to. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you what that property's like and us that have to live around it. And I said, it's nothing but a junk hole. I said, there's dogs running everywhere. They open whatever door and throw their garbage out. It's stacked feet high around the house. I said, have you checked to see how many law enforcement calls have been there? They've been turned into Buffalo Ridge Task Force. Child Services has been out there. Doesn't matter. We're going to give him this much time to pay. Well, obviously that didn't work either. I don't think he cares what the property looked like. He didn't have to live next to it, deal with the people. Is that the best interest for us as people of Pipestone?
The property has been cleaned up at this point, hasn't it? Or is it?
It got sold finally and has been cleaned up, but that took a couple years.
Tyler, did you have any comment on that? or-
Yeah, I mean, my comment to that is that my hands were tied there. That's a statutory right to that taxpayer and homeowner. It's called a confession of judgment, where they actually get 2 chances on delinquent taxes, where essentially it's built into the law, where they get it no matter what. I don't have to say that. If they want to do it, they want to apply it, and it's approved, they get it.
Okay.
That's strictly state statute.
And he came in and applied.
Correct.
And then my other issue is I also came into that same office and asked about some property out of the old school. And I was told, hey, you're not a licensed contractor. I said, okay, fine. Did we ever get paid for the contractor that took stuff out of the old school? As taxpayers? Did the money come back to us?
We did get paid something, I don't remember the number. but
And how long did it take?
Well, there's a lot to that issue. You know the contractor, I would assume.
Well, I saw the stuff for sale on the online rummage, so,
Yeah, it was a difficult situation to deal with, and we were hoping it was gonna turn out better, but it didn't.
but is that his job to, like, get the money up front, or?
It was a situation we haven't had to deal with before, and I hope we never have to deal with it again.
Okay.
But, so I don't know, I'm sure Tyler was, after the fact, it's always easy to look back and say we should have done this and should have done that. But,
Well, I'm hoping that we don't combine this
well, then we'll definitely-
position. Because I don't think we've followed what the job description was set back in this newspaper in 2013 for the requirements. I mean, what previous experience did he have, and what did the taxpayers of Pipestone provide his on-the-job training for the next 7, 8 years? You were on the board then. Could you help me explain this to me?
I think we had several candidates that we talked to, and we decided that Tyler was the one that we would like to have. And the board voted on that and decided to do it. It's difficult to look back and say this was right and that wasn't, and yeah, I don't know. I think at the time he met the job description requirements that we had for him. The CPA thing wasn't part of the requirements for the job. It would have been, it's something that would be nice to have, I mean, at that time, and it definitely would be today, I think, or something similar to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Joan. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to come up? Pete?
Robert Peterson here, and I'm just here in support of the county pursuing the position to be an appointed position. I believe the county would have control over the qualifications that you would want. I believe that you can, the county auditor or the auditor treasurer position would be under the commissioners, is that correct? As a department head? So you would be overseeing that position?
Through our administrator.
Through your administrator?
He reports to the administrator reports to us.
All right, very good. And then also, in the newspaper article a couple weeks ago, it stated that, it said Matthew Hilgart, I believe, Government Relations Manager with the Association of Minnesota Counties, AMC, said 35 of Minnesota's 87 counties have already turned elected offices into appointed offices, as allowed by the statute, which comes to about 40%. So it's already happening in the state of Minnesota right now. And I just believe that it's better off being an appointed position rather than an elected position.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to come forward at this time? Have any thoughts or ideas they'd like to share?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think we maybe need to clear up a little misunderstanding. We have already combined the two positions. That's done. Does everybody understand that? Because I know there's some questions about we shouldn't combine auditor and treasurer. The two positions have already been combined. The issue we're looking at now is whether or not we make that change from an elected official to an appointed position. Correct.
Correct.
To address Mr. Elgerson's, concern about the cross-checking, we do have an annual audit on the whole system as well by an independent auditor, so there is more checks and balances there every year as we go forward. So,
then that audit would be credible, but you could just close the auditing part of the office here. It's the same person checking itself.
well, that's a matter of opinion, but we do have an auditor that checks everything each year, and we'll remove that from the state responsibility. We have a private auditor do it now. I don't even know who it is this year. Tyler would probably know, but and they do come in every year and audit all the books. So
It might also be worth pointing out that there are appropriate safeguards in place now as far as people receiving money aren't the same people dispersing the money and so forth. That there is division of that already, so it's not like one person's in control of everything. We do have those safeguards, and that's also what the auditor's position is to oversee, to make sure that all these proper safeguards are in place. And yes, there's independent audits that come in and look as well too. And I do appreciate your comment about a person's honesty and integrity. Yes, it's very important. But when you talk about public funds or any funds, you always have safeguards in place to assure that everything is done correctly. But you've got a very good point, but there are safeguards in place.
Is there any other opinion from the public at this time?
I would move to close the public hearing.
Okay. Was there a second? Okay, motion and second to close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion?
I just have some other questions, I guess.
Okay. Absolutely.
Considering that Minnesota is a race notice state, Tyler, do you feel it is important to process land documents on a daily basis?
Process documents on a daily basis?
Yes.
Yes, and our documents do get processed on a daily basis.
I don't know, based on documentation I've seen in the recorder's office, they're not always done on a daily basis.
I will say that at times, we have to also have other work going on in the auditor treasurer's office, so documents do not take precedence at all times. By statute, we have 10 days to get documents recorded, and we've always met that 10-day limit. At times, we're busy with elections, payroll, tax calc, so on and so forth. We have many things going on in the auditor treasurer's office. that sometimes documents have to be put on the back burner for a half a day or two. But they're always recorded within the statutory deadline.
But in some cases, it's been multiple days or a week or,
Depending on what we have going on, yes. I mean, sometimes it does take a little longer.
do you run the risk that somebody, say if they had a big mortgage or something, could, be out of line, so to say, if, a week goes by and things don't get done?
I guess you'll have to ask Domain. I don't know the legality reasons of that, I guess. We record them as fast as we possibly can. I guess if we want to record them faster, we would have to have more employees, but I don't think it's necessary to hire someone just to get the documents done a half a day or a day faster.
May I make a public comment?
Well, sure, yeah, absolutely.
I filed a mortgage yesterday that had sat down there. It was a $1.9 million mortgage that sat down there since last Tuesday. The liability for the county is great when the documents don't come back on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mary
It
Ann.
was presented for filing last Tuesday. I filed it Monday.
I will say we were short-staffed on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then obviously the county was not open on Thursday and Friday. So really, we're talking about 2 working days when you're talking about last Tuesday. If we got it filed on Monday, that was 2 days of actual work being done. We were shorthanded in the office. So, I guess that's my response to that.
How about if, I've seen cases where documents come from your office with inaccurate amounts or, figures that don't match up with money you actually collected. Do you feel it's your responsibility to address those issues, or?
As far as getting them corrected, yes, and we do address them as much as possible. I'm not saying that mistakes can't happen, and mistakes, always, anybody can make a mistake.
I understand
They
that.
happen very often, but when they do, we do work to get them corrected.
I guess I've heard of examples where, when it was brought to your attention, you basically said, it's not my problem. And if it came from your office, I would think it would be your problem.
I guess I disagree with that.
You disagree that it's your problem if it came from your office, or?
I disagree that I don't care, I guess.
I guess, I also have a question about, I had asked you about this prior to taking the combined position. Why did you not train under the previous treasurer?
We tried as much as we possibly could, but as you were aware, the auditor's office is also busy with elections during that time of the year.
Right.
So we didn't have a whole lot of time. I intended to do it, but at that time, we were working on a big election, and I did not have the time when he was working on month end for me to be able to come in and help.
I mean, we knew for what, a year in advance that this was gonna happen or whatever?
Elections do run all year long.
I don't know that it would take up all your time all year, but I know you told me just privately that you had taken some online training or something thought you had everything handled for the position. And just based on the number of, issues I keep hearing about, I question, whether that is accurate or.
Are you looking for a response there?
I
don't know what you're-
Well, I don't know, I mean, I'm just, based on your comment in the paper about how if you're gonna handle tens of millions of dollars, you have to have somebody super qualified. I don't see what's happening as super qualified. And in my mind, overconfidence does not compensate for incompetence.
Do you have any more? No? All right, is there any further discussion? All in favor of coming out of public hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're now out of public hearing. Our public hearing's closed. So now,
Mr. Chairman, what we have before us is the Resolution 5943-19. If the board were to move forward with this and take County Attorney Sandy's recommendation, there would have to be some changes made to this. This obviously cannot take effect January 1st of 2020. So what would have to happen is, I think I would like to reformulate the resolution and bring it back to the next meeting. That would be appropriate.
Would that change this process? Do we have to go through the whole 2-week process again then?
No, we've already held the public hearing, so the board can make a decision. They don't have to make the decision today to do this.
Okay.
But we can do it, or we can change the date on here. But what the resolution we're requesting to do is to make it an appointed position. And according to county attorneys, it would have to be effective at the end of the term of his office, so he would still be an elected official through the end of 22.
It's a loose paraphrasing. You can adopt the resolution and say that, yes, it's going to be an appointed position. That can be effective immediately. But the actual appointment has to get delayed until a later date. In the interim, there is an agreement that's put in place between the board and Tyler as the sitting elected official, where he agrees to it and the board agrees to it, that he will then be appointed at the end of his term. So basically you change the agreement that was out there just to push that effective date back. But it's a bifurcated proceeding right now because we do have an elected sitting official.
My error. So in taking that back, the resolution could be taken today. To make it appropriate, it would have to require a supermajority of the board, which would be a 80% of the board. So it would need four A's to be approved. And if it were anything less than 4, it would be not approved, obviously. So a supermajority is required to approve this according to the statute that I read.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Steve, also, there are other parts of that statute too, as far as this process works, that the public still has an opportunity to put it on the ballot after a certain period of time. Could you go through the steps of that process?
Yeah, I went through that at the beginning when I read through the resolution. If this resolution 594319 is accepted today, the public would have 30 days to request a referendum on this to appoint the auditor treasurer. And they would have to come in with 10% of registered voters the last election, which I believe Tyler told me approximately 4,900 registered voters in Pipestone County, so it would be around the 500 signature time. So what that would do is the public could overturn that. So there would be, the public did that, within 30 days, the board resolution is rescinded and the proposed changes stop, is what would happen initially. Then after if that didn't happen, and the public does have an ability to revert back to elected, so 3 years after the auditor treasurer would become appointed, and that would be in January of 2023, the public could come back within 3 years and do a reverse referendum on that as well, and to come back to revert it back to an elected position. So the public is involved in this throughout the whole process. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Mr. Chair, I think that it's very important that we keep very clear what we're talking about here. We're talking about changing an elected position to an appointed position. We don't need to get into various discussions as far as the qualifications or job performance of any one individual here. That's not the issue we're working with. In fact, to that, I would like to ask anybody if they've got particular concerns about anything specific, that they go to the individual directly involved and approach that individual with your concerns. And if that's not satisfactorily answered for you, that you go to that individual's supervisor. Now, again, as an elected official, Tyler does not have a direct supervisor other than the voters themselves. But still, we work in conjunction with each other. So if there's a question about what's going on, the department heads need to work through our administrator to resolve these various issues. But this is all a separate question from the question at hand here. The question at hand is, do we change from an elected position to an appointed position? And to address that in light of County Attorney Sandy's information about that not being able to be done until the year 2022, 23, after the end of his existing term, I would like to step back from this and not take any action today as far as action binding it. I personally think it makes good sense. We've talked about the qualifications that it takes to do this, and an election doesn't necessarily guarantee that the qualifications. Unlike, draw a parallel to our sheriff's position. It's similar here as well too. Obviously, you need a sheriff who's qualified, and that sheriff is elected and not appointed. But with that, there's statute that says that sheriff has to meet a certain minimum standard before he can even be elected. So that part of it's taken care of. That standard doesn't apply to auditor treasurer's positions. So I think that's a fact we need to take into account here. So because of that, I think it makes good sense to have it be appointed. But I also feel that at this point, because we've got 2 years to work on this, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. I like the idea of moving forward with this process, but let's take a step back, do some more research on this, and also give the public more of an opportunity to be able to absorb what it is that we're talking about here. It's not a performance or a personnel issue, it's a procedural issue that we're looking at. So I would be more in favor of waiting and not taking action on this today. I don't know if we're talking about an official table of this or how we do it procedurally at this point, but I do think it would make sense to step back from this.
What are your wishes, Joanne? Do you feel it should be tabled?
Would that be the correct procedural to do this?
You can table it.
Yeah, I will make the motion that we table the discussion.
Wait, we still have a motion and a second on the floor. To close the public hearing.
Oh, we still haven't closed the public
Yes, we've
hearing?
been still in
Okay.
discussion.
Thank you. Yep.
All right, we'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I thought we already were on public hearing. Oh,
We had the motion and second, but we were
then we
still
went to discussion,
discussing.
gotcha. Okay, we're now at a public hearing. Well, at this time, Dan, did you?
Yeah, I will move that we table the issue of changing the elected position to an appointed position at this time, and until such time that we get more information. I don't have a specific date to bring it back up again, other than the fact that we've got a couple of years here to work on this. So table at this point, but the table is kind of an open-ended table. I don't know if there's a specific time that we should readdress this or not. I think I'd leave that up to our administrator to bring it back to us at appropriate time.
Okay. Second, okay, I have a motion and second to table discussion for future date. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Well, that concludes our regular business at this time. Is there any other business to come before the board?
We get Kyle yet.
Kyle? Oh, that is right, we did squeeze him in.
To do.
Okay, I guess we do have some
And
more business.
also Tyler with the abatement hearing.
Forgot about those additions here.
Yep, those are additions we made earlier.
Yep, 10:30. Okay, well, I think first off, we had Kyle listed ahead of Tyler on there, so Kyle, if you're ready, we'll move forward. And thank you everyone else who came out for the public hearing.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I brought Lance Wheeler with me to introduce you to him. He is our new hire for the Soil and Water Conservation District as our SWCD conservationist position that handles the primary functions of the feedlot program, primarily the site inspections, the re-registrations, and he's the one that worked on the work plan and is kind of doing our data entry into the state's program. So I brought Lance along to answer all of your tough questions. And then today what I've got before you are two documents, one being a 2020-21 delegation agreement work plan, which basically lays out the activities that the office will be doing, the minimum program requirements that the MPCA requires us to complete for the feedlot program. And the other document is our 2020-2021 grant agreement that is currently in draft form. It basically states that we will be receiving an estimated amount of $34,383 for both 20 and 21, in addition to a $15,095 inspection payment and another $3,700 in performance credits. So total grant amount over the 2 years is estimated at $106,356.
How does that compare to what we get now?
It is basically the same as what we're getting now. The state has $2.2 million, I believe, or thereabouts, statewide that they deliver to each 43 counties that are delegated, I believe. And it's distributed based on the number of sites that you have in your counties that are registered feedlots. So it pretty stays, it's
No
pretty consistent
increase,
from year to year, right? Something new with MPCA, they are starting the grant agreement process similar to what the Board of Soil and Water Resources has been doing for a number of years. So the new process for the grant agreements are that we'll be taking board action to approve them, and then they will be e-signed by the chair, assuming it's approved. So Chris, you'll be getting an email from the state asking you to e-sign the document, in the future.
Okay.
Any questions on the feedlot program, the documents before you?
I don't think so. You guys have any questions? No?
You done separate or together, or
Probably separate.
move to approve the grant agreement?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second to approve the MPCA outgoing grants agreement. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I'll entertain a motion to adopt agreement with the MPCA County Feedlot Program Delegation Agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Kyle?
I don't know if you have any questions for Lance, or Lance, if you got anything to say.
Not really, no.
He's doing a great job. He's coming from Rock County with some 4 years of experience there, so it's transitioning really well into meeting our minimum requirements, so.
Welcome to Pipestone County.
Thank you.
Welcome, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks.
Okay, Tyler, if you're ready.
As Steve indicated, all I need to do is set up a public hearing for a home initiative application I received yesterday. Parcel number 01.026.0800, currently owned by Anna LeBrun, with the estimated annual abatement totaling $934.71. Looking for the public hearing dates of December 17th at 10 a.m., as long as that works with the board's schedule, so that we can get that approved.
I'd move to approve.
Motion second to have the, would you want to have that date, the public?
17th at 10 o'clock.
17th at 10 o'clock, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. All right. Now, I believe that is all of our regular business now. For upcoming meetings, we have the AMC Annual Conference in St. Cloud, December 9th through 10th. December 10th, we're not having a meeting due to the AMC conference. We're having a special meeting December 17th at 9 a.m. and no meeting December 24th due to Christmas Eve holiday. Is there any other business to come before the board?
Nothing else, Mr. Chair?
Move to adjourn.
Second the motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn. Thank you.